All right, our guest today on the Variety Podcast, we couldn't be happier, is a former TSN SportsCentre anchor. Holly Horton joins us on the line now. Holly, thanks so much for doing this. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks so much for having me. My pleasure.
Oh, it's our pleasure to have you on. We're really big fans. We miss you on SportsCentre. We're going to get to that. But Steve, lead us off.
Yeah, so before we get to some of your career highlights and your time at TSN, we wanted to get your thoughts on some of the biggest stories in sports over the past couple of weeks. And the name that keeps coming up is Lance Armstrong. Now, he finally admitted to Oprah last week that yes, he was doping during his Tour de France wins. So we wanted to get your opinion on what you thought of his admission to Oprah, and do you think his interview is the first step to recover his image, or is it basically too late for Lance?
Well, to be honest, I found it a very interesting character study, that whole interview. I find him to be very fascinating because here he was saying all the right things. He sounded very self-aware. You know, he knew exactly why he had done it, what had prompted him, you know, what about his personality had made him that way. It sounded like he'd done some pretty intensive therapy, to be perfectly honest. And he sounded sorry, but he didn't seem sorry. You know, there was a real lack of emotion there. And so I think he just kind of brought that to racing as well. I mean, you know, the cliche, losing is not an option. It really seemed like that was true for him. And the thing is, the sport of cycling to me is kind of a joke. If 95% of the cyclists out there are doping, theoretically, doesn't that make him still the best? Not morally the best, but still, you know, the best racer out there. So it's kind of a weird issue. I know that, you know, some people want to compare it to baseball. With baseball, you know, it's a grayer area because not everybody's doing it. I honestly believe that, you know, he said it, and I believe it, that we're talking like 95% of cyclists out there are doping. So either just allow all this stuff into the sport and then see how it goes, or scrap it all together. But I mean, at the time he was racing, I admired him. I took it at base value that he wasn't doping. He said he wasn't. But I can't say that I had a whole lot of respect for the sport, and over the years, I don't know where it's going to go. So if he's going to be involved in racing, in cycling again in some capacity, you know, if he's going to try to atone for it, which he said he would, good for him. You know, if he's going to try and make amends, fine. But it's more, I think, cast a real pall on the sport itself, I have to say.
And it's good that you touched on baseball briefly there, because a couple weeks ago, the Baseball Writers Association had their annual vote of who to let into Cooperstown, and it was significant because not only was nobody selected for induction this year, but it was the first year of eligibility for guys like Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa and others who are known to have cheated. Where do you stand on the Hall of Fame for these guys? Should they be allowed in, or have they basically lost out because of what they did?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think the argument could go all day long about it. You know, somebody like Mark McGwire, I keep saying, you know, he was on top of the world, and then they said, well, you know, you were taking, you know, performance-enhancing substances. But at the time, that was legal. I think what really hurt Mark McGwire was the, you know, the whole, I'm not here to talk about the past. I mean, that was just ridiculous. Again, it's just such a gray area because, you know, you could still say what these guys have done is amazing, but we really don't have a clear idea of just what percentage of guys in all of baseball are doping. So, you know, if it was me, I would just kind of have their accolades with an asterisk, and whether they got into the Hall of Fame, you're right. I don't have a definitive answer there, but it's disappointing to me because I loved watching that McGwire and Sosa race. I thought they were great for the sport.
For sure.
And Barry Bonds, well, I guess you could admire him for his accomplishments, but he sure wasn't a very nice person. So I think it's different from cycling. I do think that in cycling it seems to be so prevalent throughout the sport.
And we're going to move to yet another sport here, Holly. It's Super Bowl 47 this Sunday between the Baltimore Ravens and the San Francisco 49ers. Kaepernick, the entire season, has been unbelievable for a rookie QB to make it to the big game. We've got Ray Lewis playing his last game, and the most fascinating storyline that has never happened before in all of sports, it's brother versus brother with Jim and John Harbaugh. Your thoughts on the game? Who do you like on Sunday?
Yeah, I'm never so good with these predictions. I'm just terrible with them. I'll say the Niners, but I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game because of Ray Lewis. I think, one last game, he's going to be the powerhouse that he's always been. So I'm going to say it's a low-scoring affair, but the Niners come out on top. And New Orleans, it's going to be a great party nonetheless.
Sticking with football, the Buffalo Bills re-upped their contract with Rodgers to play games in Toronto for another 5 years. This is stale to me. I want to get your thoughts on this decision because when it started, a lot of people were jazzed by it. But as the years went on, we have really seen a lot of empty seats during these games. The excitement level has completely dropped. And then you think to yourself, hey, it's the Buffalo Bills. So do you like this decision for Toronto? And do you see maybe Toronto getting their own franchise one day?
No, I hate the decision. I think it was, such a non-factor here in Toronto. I think the Bills hated playing here, because it was a home game, but not a home game. Like you said, I think there's just a complete lack of interest. And I don't know whether that's a good gauge for whether an NFL team could be sustained here because, a Toronto team versus a Buffalo team. I know there are a lot of Bills fans here, but I don't know. This is a hockey town. I don't know if an NFL team would really survive on a long-term basis.
And one thing I was going to add there too is I think what makes it tough in Toronto is that there are so many fans of different teams across the league that it doesn't feel like a home game for Buffalo. So it feels like a lose-lose sometimes.
It really does, yeah. Yeah, and like I said, if it was a Toronto team, I don't know if there would be that much more interest to sustain it. But I've been wrong before. The CFL, I don't know if you can judge it from the CFL either. The Argos fans would translate into NFL fans as well, or all the NFL fans would come out of the woodwork here. It's not a bet I would take, though.
Now, Holly, let's focus on you. You left your job at TSN SportsCentre after the birth of your son. I have to imagine that was one of the hardest things you've ever had to do. I find this fascinating because I feel a lot of women go through this. And because you were in the public eye, obviously it gets more of the spotlight, and you had the courage to take this step. How and why did you ultimately make the decision? And can you take us through the process and how it happened?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started at TSN, it was in 2004, and I remember at the time the executive producer, Mark Milliere, he said to me, our show goes live at 2 a.m. every night. Are you fine with that? And I said, yeah, I'm good. Yeah. So, at the time I would have done it at any time. I would have worked any number of hours, any number of days. It was a dream job, absolute dream job. I was deliriously happy. And for the most part, I was deliriously happy the whole 7 years that I was there. But things definitely changed after I had my son. I came back from mat leave. I worked for a year after my mat leave, and it was really exhausting. You'd go live at 2 a.m. And because I worked weekends, I always worked weekends, and then I didn't really have a set shift during the week, so I could work 3 other nights, or 4 nights, or 2 nights. I was always going to bed at a different time, waking up at a different time, and I could coordinate my schedule before I had a child. I could kind of, go to bed late all the time, wake up late. Couldn't do that anymore with a 1-year-old. And I just started to think, okay, this isn't going to get easier. As he gets older, he's going to be involved in stuff, and I'm going to be working on 2 hours of sleep, which, some people can do no problem. I am not one of those people. So really it came down to a change in lifestyle for me, a change of lifestyle, change of priorities. I absolutely am so grateful for my time at TSN. I'm so grateful they gave me an opportunity. Nobody could take those 7 years away from me. It was a wonderful experience. And it was tough to make that decision. I really, really thought about it. I really tried to envision what my life would be like if I wasn't there anymore. And ultimately, I made the choice for personal reasons, and it's worked out. So, when I finally got the courage to tell my boss, I felt relieved. And usually that's a sign that you've made the right decision for yourself.
And so after you had your son, how long were you still at TSN?
I was there for another year.
Another year. And you're still doing that type of shift?
It was kind of a blur, yeah. It took months where I really thought about this decision. I thought, okay, how can I get around it? I thought of alternative things I could do, whether I'd go halftime. I was thinking of all sorts of different scenarios, and it just, ultimately, this is what it came down to.
And what are a few things that you miss most about TSN?
Adult conversation. No, to be honest, I really miss the broadcasting part. I miss the TV part. I love TV. I love being in the process of making TV. The broadcasting skills that you develop there, the writing, the presenting, the fast-paced environment, that's exciting for me, and certainly something that I thought was a true passion at the time.
Now, I think a lot of people out there might think that sports anchors might just read a script off a prompter. What were some of the other things you did there? Because it's so much more than that, isn't it? Yeah,
it is a lot more than that. And certainly when you work at TSN, you have an entire team of very talented people who are writing the highlight scripts for you. I didn't do that, at the start of my career when I worked at other stations. I was writing everything. I was basically a one-person show. So when you get to TSN and this person's writing this for me, and this person's writing this for me, it was lovely. And everybody, as I said, is very talented there. But within that, you want to find your own style. So anytime that you see any anchor on camera, they have written that on-camera intro. And then within the highlight pack, you have the chance to improvise or edit any script that's given to you. And also, you're getting a lot of scripts completely cold. So, which I mean, you're getting it while the show is in progress. You're reading it for the first time as you're reading it on air. So, obviously there's a skill to that. It's not just simple, straightforward reading. Obviously you have to follow along too.
I know there's a lot of people who will get out of school and not know exactly what they want to do. But for a lot of us in the radio and television industry who have kind of broken in already and have gotten our foot in the door, so to speak, we tend to have our eyes set on a certain gig that we aspire to, where we say to ourselves, hey, if I could end up there, that would be really great. Were you always a sports fan growing up, Holly? Did you know you wanted to get to TSN?
Yeah, once I got into broadcasting, I aspired to get to TSN. I would say I didn't really put two and two together until I was in university. My first degree was in psychology at Western, and I started volunteering there because I finally kind of thought, my mom was an English teacher, high school English teacher. My dad was a high school phys ed teacher, so I really got the love of sports from my dad, and I played sports as a kid. But I really loved theater and writing and that sort of thing from my mom. So I really feel like I was a combination of those two. Once I put it together, I was like, why didn't I think of this sooner? And so I really felt like that was the best of both worlds in doing broadcasting, and sports just seemed like a natural thing to go to, a natural part of broadcasting to be in.
Now, like you, Holly, Mike and I are both graduates of Ryerson's Radio and Television Arts program. What is some advice that you have for young graduates and students trying to make it into the business?
Such a great school to have graduated from, and the staff there's amazing, and there's so many different opportunities, especially I'm sure that you guys realize being in RTA as opposed to journalism. I don't think there are hardly anybody that I graduated with from RTA that are doing the same thing. There were all sorts of different opportunities within that. Everybody had different interests. my advice would probably be the same as anybody starting out in an industry. Just, keep your mouth shut and your ears open. You may think that you're, the next big thing in broadcasting, and maybe you are, but you're still really green and you're surrounded by experienced people. So learn and listen as much as you can. Inspiration and teaching is going to come from unexpected places and people. And I would say networking is always a huge thing when it comes to any industry. And learn as much as you can. Don't come out and think, oh, well, I'm never going to have to shoot. I'm never going to have to be a videographer. Or I'm never going to have to learn to edit. Yeah, you may have to. So, you're only making yourself more valuable by learning as much as you can.
And Holly, do you ever think that you'll get back into the industry, either at TSN or in other ways, some way down the road?
Hey, if you guys know of anything.
How about a co-host on the Variety podcast?
Done. Yeah, as I said, it is a passion of mine. I'm definitely open to opportunities. It would have to kind of fit my life right now, and that's okay. But it's definitely, as I said, a passion of mine, and even if it wasn't in sports anymore, because to be perfectly honest, I was at TSN. I feel like that's kind of the cream of the crop. It's, best in Canada. That's it in our country. So, I've thought about exploring other possibilities within broadcasting or within TV in general, because I really do love the medium.
And before we let you go here, Holly, we're going to play a little game with you called This or That. We're going to give you a few scenarios, so let's have some fun with this. Steve, lead us off.
All right, so the first one here is your favorite player, Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin? Alex Ovechkin.
Wow.
Do I have to give an explanation or no?
I'm interested to hear why Ovechkin.
Well, I love both of them, but Alex Ovechkin I just find him exciting. I find him really exciting and pretty amusing.
Good enough. Best wardrobe, Brian Mudryk or Chris Schultz?
Oh, this is a tough one. I can't go against my former co-host. I would say Chris Schultz, only because he's got a different kind of stature. And so it's harder to find clothes that fit him, and he does an exceptional job at it.
I like that. And you know what? I got to tell you a quick story. I actually visited TSN when I was in RTA, and we went to see the CFL on TSN. And Chris Schultz said hello to me during a commercial break, and he kind of gave me a nudge on the shoulder, and I literally fell over. It was insane.
Yeah. Actually, Dan O'Toole has a story similar to that. You're sitting down, and Chris Schultz came along and slapped him on the back, and he couldn't breathe.
And we got to say too about Brian Mudryk, no one can wear pinstripes like Brian can.
He does love his
pinstripes. That's so true.
Yeah, he really loves his pinstripes. Yeah.
The next one we have here.
He's a dressed man.
Favorite Olympics, summer or winter Olympics?
I would say winter. Yeah, definitely, because of the hockey.
Michael Phelps or Usain Bolt?
Usain Bolt for sure. Yeah. Again, amusing factor. It's one thing to see these athletes do amazing things, but he's just such a joy to watch. He just seems like a really happy guy, so I love watching him.
An unsports-related one here. Your favorite place to visit, would it be the East Coast, the Maritimes, or the West Coast, British Columbia?
Oh, goodness. Well, I spent 3 years in Alberta working at stations there. Mm-hmm. So while I do love the Maritimes, I would probably say the West, just because the people there were so good to me.
And last but not least, best Movember mustache, Jay Onrait or Gino Reda?
Well, I have to go with Jay, only because he gets points for creativity. I think every year he puts some serious planning into what kind of shape his facial hair is going to take. So you got to give him props for that.
What's it like with, all of the TSN personalities that we have come to love by just watching? What's the atmosphere like with the camaraderie behind the scenes? Can you touch on that?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Jay and Dan, if you're in the newsroom with them, they are genuinely good friends, and they kind of treat the newsroom like, just like they're watching in their living room kind of thing, and joking around. And it has the air of being very casual and fun, but at the same time, I think people underestimate just what great broadcasters Jay and Dan are. They're very, very smart, very ambitious, and they're pretty meticulous in their shtick. And Dutchie is as big a character as you think he is. And again, exceptional broadcaster, just the gift of the gab for sure. He has conversations with himself on and off screen. You're just kind of along the ride for the ride with him. But again, a guy that I grew up watching, and you're just kind of in awe, even when you were doing a show alongside of him. He really is somebody who eats, sleeps, and breathes sports, and he has done how many shows for how many years, and you can just tell he loves it. He just can't get enough of it, and that is really infectious and comes through on screen. Jen's a great girl. Welcomed me with open arms when I first got there. No sense of competition whatsoever. And she's somebody, who didn't come from necessarily a broadcasting background, but who has worked really hard to get where she is, and now she's a natural and a bona fide star there. Mudrik, another guy, so nice, very gracious, extremely driven, knows exactly what his goals are, and very, very, very keen on achieving them. Who else have I? Oh, and Rod Smith, one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. Aside from having one of the most incredible voices, is amazing broadcaster and so humble, just so humble. Just a really wonderful person.
Holly, this was such a great thrill. Thanks so much for coming on. We really enjoyed it. How old is your son now?
He's 3 now. Yeah, he's 3.
3 years
just
old.
Starting to get into sports himself. So it's going to be a wild ride,
Great.
I'm sure.
That's great. Have a great night. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Good luck to you.